I never thought I'd be the guy to get cheated on. When I married Jessica, I believed we were a solid team. We met in college, bonded over late-night study sessions, and had been together for almost a decade. Our life together was picture perfect, or so I thought. We had our quirks, sure. Jessica was always a little on the dramatic side, a fact that I loved about her, but it also made her a master at deflecting any issues that came our way. It started with little things. She'd come home later than usual from her yoga classes, her excuse being that she was hanging out with the girls. At first, I smiled through the worry. A night out with friends was healthy, right? But then there were other signs. Her sudden need for privacy with her phone, the way she'd get defensive if I asked to see her texts, and the shifts in her affection towards me. I began to feel the distance in our relationship like a thick fog rolling in, slowly swallowing the warmth of our connection. Then there was that one fateful Saturday morning. I woke up early to find that Jessica had already left. For her class. As I made coffee, I noticed something strange on the kitchen counter, a receipt for a fancy restaurant I knew we hadn't visited. The date was a week prior, and the total was way too high for a meal for one. My stomach twisted as I held it, a sense of dread creeping in. I decided to go back to bed and pretend I hadn't seen it. Maybe it was an oversight, right? But the doubts hung over me like a storm cloud. Later that day, I went out for groceries and ran into our neighbor, Mark. We exchanged small talk, and then he casually mentioned seeing Jessica coming back from a dinner with friends. Friends where? I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. After I got home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The tipping point came a few days later when I got home early from work. I found Jessica in the living room, but she wasn't alone. Mark was there, too. They jumped apart as I entered, the awkwardness coating the air thickly. Jessica's blush was evident, and Mark's face went pale. My heart raced as I tried to process what I was seeing. I casually asked if they were watching a movie together, trying to act like I hadn't seen anything unusual. But Jessica stammered something about just catching up, and that's when I felt the heat rise in my chest. I confronted her later that night. I laid everything out, the receipts, the strange behavior, and the sight of her cozying up with our neighbor. Her reaction was infuriatingly dismissive. "You're just being paranoid, Mike," she said, rolling her eyes like I was being dramatic. "I can have friends over without it meaning anything." But deep down, I could see the guilt in her eyes. She never directly answered my questions and instead spun a web of lies, claiming that I was imagining things and that I was too focused on work to see what was happening right in front of me. I felt my anger boil over, and in that moment I was struck by the realization that the woman I loved was betraying me right under my nose. I spiraled. My initial shock morphed into rage. I was angry at her for lying, angry at myself for being so blind, and angry at Mark for crossing that line. I felt sick, and I didn't know what to do with all these emotions swirling around inside me. It was a surreal experience, confronting the person who promised to love you for life and seeing them shrink away from the truth. I didn't even recognize the woman standing before me anymore. As the night wore on, I walked around our house, trying to find solace in the memories that now felt tainted. I could no longer look at the photos on the walls. The laughter that echoed in those frames felt like a cruel joke. I needed to make a decision. Would I fight for this marriage, or would I finally let go? The next morning, I knew I had to act. I couldn't stay in a situation where love felt more like a burden than a blessing. I decided to move forward, but how? I wanted to take control of my life again. I had a few options in mind, but I needed to think this through clearly. I had to distance myself from the pain, to remove myself from the environment that had turned toxic. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. Instead of trying to salvage the wreckage of our marriage, I would upgrade my life in a way that Jessica never expected. I started plotting my escape, mentally and physically. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a journey filled with twists and turns. The days that followed my confrontation with Jessica were a blur of emotion and sleepless nights. I felt like a ghost in my own home, wandering through rooms filled with memories that were now laced with betrayal. My heart was heavy, but my mind was racing with plans. I didn't want to just leave. No, I wanted to make a statement. I wanted to show her that I could move on, that I could be happier without her. I started by gathering my thoughts and plotting my next steps. I had a decent job as a software developer, but I had never really focused on my financial goals. My life had revolved around our shared plans for the future. However, now that I was considering a fresh start, I began to take stock of my savings. Over the next few weeks, I meticulously saved every penny I could while looking for a new place. I enlisted the help of a real estate agent, a woman named Sarah who had a knack for finding hidden gems in the market. She showed me a few places, but one mansion in particular caught my eye. It was an old Victorian-style house with large windows, a sprawling garden, and enough space for me to finally have a man cave, a remote space to escape the memories of Jessica. It felt like it could be a sanctuary. I envisioned hosting friends, throwing barbecues, and finally living life on my terms. I signed the lease with a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was my first major step away from the life I had built with Jessica. I packed my belongings, but it was hard to sift through our past. Every item I touched was a reminder of the love we once shared. Finally, the day came for the big move. I hired movers, and as they loaded my boxes into the truck, I felt a surge of adrenaline. I was free. Free from the lies, the suspicion, and the emotional turmoil that had consumed my life. Once I settled into my new mansion, I reveled in the peace of my solitude. I transformed the dusty old room into a workspace that inspired creativity, and I started working out to clear my mind. I even adopted a dog, a golden retriever named Max, who quickly became my new best friend. The companionship helped fill that void that Jessica's absence had created. But as I began to thrive in my new environment, Jessica's reaction was predictable. She reached out, trying to catch up, claiming that she missed me and wanted to talk. I was tempted to hear her out, to find out if she had any remorse for what she'd done. But I knew deep down that I needed to resist the urge to engage. However, I couldn't completely detach from the emotional roller coaster. There were moments when I found her lingering in my thoughts, the memories of our happier times taunting me. I would often wonder if I made the right choice to leave, if I could have salvaged our relationship. But each time I thought of her, I'd remember the way she dismissed my concerns and the look of guilt that flashed across her face during our confrontation. I started to meet new people, letting go of my past and embracing the present. My new friends were invigorating. They were spontaneous and fun-loving, and even though I wasn't ready to jump into another serious relationship, I enjoyed the camaraderie. I learned to laugh again, something that felt foreign not long ago. But then, a few weeks later, I received a text from Jessica. "Can we talk? I need to explain." Part of me was curious, but another part was resolute. I didn't need her explanations. I had already moved on. However, I also knew that I had to face her sooner or later. Maybe I could get closure, or maybe I could finally assert my new life and show her that she had lost someone who was worth keeping. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop, prepared for whatever spin she might put on the situation. I felt a mix of nerves and excitement as the time approached. How would she react to the new me, the man who had taken control of his life? When I walked into that coffee shop, my heart raced as I spotted her at a table by the window. She looked different. Her hair was freshly styled, and she wore a dress that accentuated her figure, an obvious attempt to impress. But what struck me the most was the look in her eyes. They were filled with a mixture of hope and regret. As I approached, I prepared myself for the conversation ahead. I was determined not to let her charm me back into her world. I took a deep breath, remembering the newfound strength I had built in my new life, and sat down opposite her, ready to hear what she had to say. "I'm glad you came," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I've missed you." I steeled myself, knowing that this was a moment that could define my future. This was the chance to confront the past while standing firm in my new reality. I was ready for whatever she had to throw at me. As I sat across from Jessica in that bustling coffee shop, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. The smell of freshly brewed coffee hung in the air, mingling with the chatter of patrons. I could see the nervousness in her eyes, and yet a part of me felt vindicated. This was my moment to confront her while standing firm in my newfound independence. "I'm glad you came," she repeated, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her napkin. "I've missed you." I took a sip of my coffee, allowing the warmth to travel down my throat as I considered my response. "You missed me?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Is that why you chose to sleep with our neighbor?" Her expression faltered for a moment but quickly transformed into a defensive stance. "I was confused, okay? Mark was just there for me when you were preoccupied with work. I thought we were drifting apart and I made a mistake." "Confused?" I echoed, unable to contain the bitterness in my voice. "That's what you call it, cheating on your husband because you felt neglected." I felt my heart pound in my chest, the emotion of betrayal bubbling just below the surface. "You didn't even try to talk to me about how you felt." Her eyes narrowed and she leaned in, lowering her voice. "Mike, you don't understand. I was lonely. You were always so focused on your job, I felt like I was invisible. Mark he was there. It didn't mean anything, didn't mean anything." I interrupted, my pulse racing. "You don't just give yourself to someone else when things get tough. You either work through the issues or you end it. You didn't even give me a chance." Tension crackled in the air between us. I could see Jessica's composure wavering. The anger I felt was mixed with a hint of sadness, a recognition of the love we once shared that had now turned sour. "I thought you were the one who'd left me behind, Mike," she countered, her voice rising. "You were always so busy with your projects that I felt like an afterthought." "I was working to provide for us." I shot back, feeling the blood rush to my face. "I thought we were building a life together, not falling apart." The truth washed over me like a wave. I had poured my heart into our relationship, believing we were in it together. Yet here we were, crashing against the rocks of betrayal. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside. "You could have talked to me. You could have told me how you felt. Instead, you decided to betray the trust we built over the years." Jessica looked away, her gaze dropping to the table. "I know," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I'm sorry, I was foolish. I thought I could fix things by myself." "Fix things?" I scoffed. "You wrecked everything. You don't just cheat and then expect it to be okay." I felt the hurt swell in my chest and my fingers clenched around the coffee cup. I had to stand my ground. She finally met my gaze with a mixture of remorse and desperation. "I want to fix this, Mike. I want you back." The words hit me like a slap and I felt a mixture of anger and pity for her. "You can't just say that. It's not that easy. I've moved on, Jess. I'm in a different place now and I deserve better than what you've offered." "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I made a terrible mistake, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust back." The intensity of her plea made my heart ache, but I couldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment. I had spent too long in a place of doubt and insecurity. What would that even look like? Trust isn't easily rebuilt, and I don't know if I can ever see you the same way again. For a moment, she looked defeated, her defenses crumpling. "I understand if you can't forgive me right now, but I want to try to make it right. I've been going to therapy and I'm learning so much about myself. I realize now how selfish I was." I took a moment to process her words. I could see that she was genuinely trying to communicate her remorse, but it felt like a little too late. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "And what if I said I'm not interested in a second chance? What if I've decided to move forward without you?" Her expression shifted from pleading to one of frustration. "Is it really that easy for you? You can just walk away after everything we've built together?" The heat surged in my chest again, a mix of anger and pain. "It wasn't easy for you to throw it all away, was it? You made your choice, and now I'm making mine." Silence enveloped the table and I could see the realization wash over her. She was losing me, not just physically but emotionally. I felt a sense of relief in asserting myself, breaking free from the emotional hold she had on me. Finally, she spoke softly. "I never meant to hurt you, Mike. I just didn't know how to handle my feelings." And that's the problem, Jess. It's not just about your feelings anymore. It's about the damage you've done. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the conversation. "I think it's best if we go our separate ways. I need to focus on myself for a change." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears and I felt a pang of guilt, but I quickly suppressed it. She had made her choices and now I had to make mine. I stood up, placing my coffee cup on the table, my resolve solidifying. I hope you find what you're looking for, but I can't be a part of it anymore. As I walked out of that coffee shop, I felt lighter, but also a little sad. Saying goodbye to the woman I once loved was hard, but I knew it was necessary. I had taken a significant step toward reclaiming my life, and as painful as it was, I was ready to embrace my new reality. The weeks following my confrontation with Jessica were a roller coaster of emotions, but I focused on what mattered most: reclaiming my life. I felt a sense of freedom that I hadn't experienced in years. I had taken a step away from the chaos and drama of our relationship, and I was determined to reshape my future on my own terms. Settling into my new mansion with Max by my side, I started to explore my interests again. I picked up hobbies I had long since abandoned, like painting and cooking. I found joy in simple things, making elaborate dinners for myself, painting canvases that reflected my mood, and having unstructured weekends filled with adventure and spontaneity. I felt like I was rediscovering a part of myself that had been lost in the fog of my marriage. I started venturing into new social circles, meeting people who shared similar interests. I joined a local hiking group, where I began to feel the exhilaration of physical activity mixed with the beauty of nature. There was something therapeutic about being out in the fresh air, surrounded by friends who encouraged me to embrace life again. I began to feel more confident and whole, but the nagging thoughts of Jessica's betrayal still lingered. I would catch myself thinking about those moments we shared, how we used to laugh, plan our future, and dream together. It was a bittersweet nostalgia, reminding me of what we had lost. The emotional scars remained, but I was learning to accept them as part of my journey. One evening, as I was unwinding in my newly decorated living room, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Jessica, asking if we could meet again. My heart raced at the thought. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to continue moving on without looking back. But another part of me was curious about what she wanted to say. I decided to meet her, but this time I was going to set the tone. I chose a neutral location, a small park where we used to walk together. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over everything, but I felt a chill as I waited for her to arrive. When she showed up, she seemed different, more composed, maybe even a bit more mature. She approached cautiously, looking more like the girl I fell in love with, yet I knew too well the pain she had caused. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, her voice steady. "I know our last conversation didn't go as I had hoped." "Yeah, it was pretty intense," I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she continued. "I've been in therapy, and I realize how much I need to take responsibility for my actions. I want you to know that I'm sorry. I've hurt you deeply, and I regret it every day." I looked at her, searching for signs of sincerity. "Regret doesn't change what happened, Jessica. You made your choice, and I'm still living with the consequences. I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want to show you that I'm serious about changing and that I'm working on myself. I just hope to rebuild some kind of friendship, or at least have some closure." I felt a mixture of irritation and sympathy. "Closure, is that what you think this is? You shattered our relationship. You can't just expect us to go back to being friends after everything." "I don't want to go back to the way things were, Mike. I just want to be better for myself and maybe for you too. I know I can't erase the past, but I want to be a person you can trust again, even if it takes time." Her honesty hit me hard. I could see she was genuinely trying to express remorse, but trusting her again felt like a monumental task. "You need to understand that the way you went about things destroyed my trust. I need time to figure out who I am without you in my life, and I don't think friendship is possible right now." A pained expression crossed her face, and I felt a twinge of guilt. "I get it. I really do," she said softly. "But I want you to know that I'm changing. I'm learning how to communicate better, to be more open. I never wanted to hurt you, even if it seems like I did." I remained silent, absorbing her words. I wanted to believe that she was genuinely working on herself, but I was still grappling with my emotions. "If you really want to change, then do it for yourself. Don't do it for me. I need to focus on my own healing right now," I finally said. Jessica nodded slowly, understanding washing over her features. "I will. I just hope one day we can be friends again." As we parted ways, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness wash over me. I had confronted Jessica again, but this time it felt different. It wasn't about rekindling anything. It was about finding closure for both of us. I realized that I had a lot of healing to do, and while she might be working on her issues, I needed to focus on mine. That night I lay in bed, Max curled up beside me, and reflected on everything that had transpired. I felt stronger, more in control of my life. I was finally beginning to understand that healing was a process, and that it was okay for me to take things one step at a time. I decided to fully invest in my happiness, to explore every avenue that brought me joy. Life was too short to dwell in the shadows of the past. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, even if it was uncertain. I was no longer just a victim of betrayal. I was reclaiming my identity, one day at a time. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself fully engrossed in my new life. The mansion had become more than just a physical space. It was a symbol of my transformation. I decorated it to reflect my personality. Bright colors and eclectic art adorned the walls, and I turned the backyard into a small oasis filled with plants and flowers. It was my sanctuary, a place where I could escape the memories of my past and focus on the present. Max and I explored the nearby trails, hiked through lush forests, and discovered hidden waterfalls. Every hike felt like a step towards healing, a way to shed the weight of betrayal and immerse myself in nature. I began to feel a sense of peace I hadn't known in years, liberated from the emotional turmoil that had once consumed me. Eventually, I decided it was time to delve into the dating world again. After a few nights out with friends and some encouraging nudges, I created an online dating profile. I was hesitant at first, unsure if I was ready to open myself up to someone new. But slowly I began connecting with women who shared my interests. I went on casual dates, each one a refreshing reminder that life was still full of possibilities. One evening, while on a date with a woman named Megan, I found myself laughing freely. She was fun, smart, and had a contagious zest for life. We connected over shared experiences and dreams, and it felt great to be out with someone who appreciated me for who I was now, not the person I had been before my marriage. After a few more dates with Megan, I realized I was genuinely enjoying myself. There was no pressure, no expectations, just two people getting to know each other. I could feel myself opening up, discovering new aspects of my personality that had been buried for too long. However, just as I was beginning to embrace this new chapter, Jessica decided to re-enter my life again, this time with a more significant impact. One afternoon, I was cleaning up the backyard when I received a message from her asking if we could meet again. I took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. I agreed to meet her at a cafe I frequented, hoping that this time our conversation would be more productive. When I arrived, I found her sitting at a table looking more composed than she had the last time. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, a hint of nervousness in her voice. "I've been thinking a lot about everything." "Yeah, what's on your mind?" I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. "I want to apologize again, but I also want to be honest about my feelings. I've been working on myself and I've realized how much I took you for granted. I've been trying to understand why I did what I did," she admitted. "And I think I've discovered that I was trying to fill a void within myself that had nothing to do with you." I remained silent, processing her words. "That's good to hear," I finally replied. "But what are you hoping to achieve by talking to me again?" "I want to show you that I'm changing and that I'm ready to take responsibility for my actions. I know it's a long road ahead and I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But if there's any chance we could work on being friends, I'm willing to put in the effort." My initial instinct was to shut her down, to remind her of the pain she caused me, but part of me was surprised by her honesty. "Jessica, you need to understand that rebuilding trust takes time. I'm not in a place where I can be friends with you yet. I'm still healing." "Of course, I get that. I'm not asking for immediate forgiveness. I just want the opportunity to show that I can be a better person. I want to earn your trust back one step at a time." It was a bold statement, but I was struck by her vulnerability. "I appreciate your honesty, but I need to prioritize my own well-being right now. I've spent so long trying to make our relationship work and I need to focus on myself. Jessica nodded, looking somewhat defeated. I understand. I'll give you space. I just hope that one day we can have a friendship if that's something you want. As we wrapped up our conversation, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. I had stood my ground, asserted my boundaries, and made it clear that my healing journey was paramount. I walked away from that cafe feeling lighter, knowing I had done the right thing for myself. After that meeting, I continued to grow closer to Megan. We laughed, shared stories, and explored new restaurants together. I felt a warmth blooming inside me, something I hadn't experienced in a long time. I was ready to embrace love again, but I wanted to do it on my terms this time. One evening, while sitting on my back porch with Megan, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, I felt a wave of gratitude. I turned to her and shared, "You know, I didn't think I'd be able to enjoy life like this again after everything that happened." Megan smiled softly, her eyes sparkling in the light. "I'm glad you're finding joy again. You deserve it." That simple acknowledgement filled me with warmth. I had spent so long in the shadows, but now I was stepping into the light. The journey had been difficult, but it was leading me to a place of self-discovery and newfound happiness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized that while the scars from my past would always be there, they no longer defined me. I was moving forward, embracing love, friendship, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. And just like that, life was beginning again. As the days turned into weeks, I felt the enormous weight of my past slowly dissipate. With Megan by my side, I began to create new memories, ones that were vibrant and filled with laughter. We explored the city, tried new cuisines, and spent lazy Sundays at home, watching movies and cooking together. Each moment felt like a step further away from the pain Jessica had inflicted on me. But as I rebuilt my life, I also found myself reflecting on my journey. I had learned so much about resilience, self-worth, and the importance of boundaries. The experience of betrayal had opened my eyes to aspects of myself that I had neglected for too long. I was learning that love should not come at the cost of my own happiness and well-being. One evening, while sitting outside on the porch with Megan, I found myself sharing the story of my past relationship. I spoke candidly about the hurt, the anger, and how I had reached a point of decision. I never thought I would be someone who would walk away from a marriage, I confessed, looking into her eyes. But I realized that sometimes letting go is the only way to move forward. Megan listened intently, her expression filled with compassion. Takes a lot of strength to recognize when something isn't right for you and to take action. You should be proud of yourself, she said softly. Her words meant a lot to me. I had spent so long wrapped up in self-doubt, questioning my worth and my choices. But now I felt empowered. I was no longer the victim of someone else's infidelity. I was the architect of my own happiness. Around that time, Jessica reached out again, wanting to check in on how I was doing. I was unsure how to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to move on without any lingering ties. But I also recognized that I was in a place now where I could respond without being affected emotionally. I agreed to meet her one last time. When we sat down, I could sense a change in her demeanor. She looked more mature, more introspective, and there was a humility about her that I hadn't noticed before. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, her voice steady. "I wanted to hear about how you're doing and to let you know that I'm genuinely sorry for everything." "I appreciate that," I replied, keeping my tone neutral but firm. "I've been doing well, actually. I've made significant changes in my life since we last spoke." Her expression softened. "I'm glad to hear that. I've been doing a lot of soul-searching myself. I've realized how much I've hurt you, and I've been working on myself in therapy. I'm learning how to communicate better and understand my own emotions." "That's good to hear," I said, genuinely acknowledging her growth. "But trust is hard-earned, Jessica. I'm glad you're working on yourself, but I need to focus on my own life and the relationship I'm building now." "I understand," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I just wanted you to know that I've changed, and I hope one day we can find a way to be civil with each other. I wish you nothing but happiness, Mike." I felt a mix of emotions as I listened to her speak. It was a bittersweet goodbye to a chapter of my life that had been tumultuous and painful. Thank you, Jessica. I genuinely hope you find your path too. As we parted ways, I felt a strange sense of closure. I had faced the ghosts of my past, and while they would always be a part of my story, they no longer defined me. I walked away with a sense of liberation that I had never fully embraced before. With Megan, I continued to grow. Our relationship blossomed in ways I never thought possible. We talked about our dreams, our aspirations, and I felt a sense of hope for the future, a future filled with love, respect, and a deep understanding of each other's needs. One night as we stargazed in the backyard, I pulled Megan closer. "You've brought so much joy back into my life," I said softly, looking into her eyes. "I never thought I'd feel this way again." She smiled, her warmth enveloping me. "You deserve to be happy, Mike. I'm just glad I can be a part of your journey." In that moment, I realized that life was about moving forward, about creating a new narrative filled with possibilities. I had learned valuable lessons about trust, resilience, and self-love. I was no longer the man defined by betrayal. I was a man who had risen from the ashes, ready to embrace whatever came next. The past would always be a part of me, but I was no longer bound by it. I had chosen to live, to love, and to grow, and I was excited for the journey ahead. The future was bright, and I was ready to step into it with open arms.